Hey guys, this is Jewish, Asian, and Pacific Island Wrestlers You Should Know, sponsored by Premier Pro Wrestling, and I am Randy Ritchie. This is being brought to you commercial free. So today we're going to talk about Paul Heyman and one of the most underrated guys over the last 20 years, Kenzo Suzuki. I love that word, whilst his more notable wrestling time was spent in Japan, Kenzo Suzuki made the most of his small stint in WWE. He had his fair share of small feuds with the likes of Billy Gunn, RVD, and Rey Mysterio, and at one point challenging Cena for the United States Championship. And if you guys remember, that is actually the little storyline hyphen angle that put John Cena out in the forefront. That's how good Suzuki is as a wrestler inside that ring. Do you understand? It's one of those guys that goes out there and is unselfish. You know? His most notable moment in WWE was winning the WWE Tag Team Championship along with Nate Dupree, with the reign lasting a few months. Though he was released just a year into his tenure with the company, he cemented his name in the history books for a championship win. What you don't know about Kenzo Suzuki, and once again, is what an outstanding and overrated talent this guy was. You should have seen him, and there's no mention of it anywhere. The stint he had in Triple A down in Mexico. Triple A, their offices are located in Mexico City, and you just had to be there to believe the heat that he and Ricky Banderas, El Macias, El Muertes had when they were the top heels for Triple A. As a matter of fact, a lot of the luchadors were hitting up Kenzo and Ricky for advice on storytelling or American storytelling in their matches, because Suzuki did such an outstanding job mashing up or melding the Japanese style with the lucha style with the American style. In the ring, the guy was amazingly believable as well. Anyway, that's Kenzo Suzuki. And one more thing about Kenzo Suzuki. When I worked at TNA Wrestling as production manager and other hats that I wore, it was in fact myself who went to Dutch Mantel about booking Ricky Banderas, who was Judas Macias at TNA Wrestling. And everybody loved the entrance and the first appearance of El Macias, Ricky Banderas, except for Dixie Carter and her people. The plan was to be able to bring in Ricky Banderas first and then Kenzo Suzuki, so we would have the top heels from Mexico on the TNA roster, and it was already approved with Triple A that they could take the TNA dates and work angles. Too bad TNA shot themselves in the foot. Here's some things I didn't know about Paul Heyman. Born in the Bronx to a family of Holocaust survivors, folks. That explains a lot. Heyman debuted in the professional wrestling business in 1986. He was the CEO and known as the creative force behind ECW, which was then East Coast Championship Wrestling, became, Extreme Championship Wrestling from 1993 till its closure in 2001. Before owning ECW, he was a manager under the ring name Paul E. Dangerously. First it was Dangerously, and then they changed it to Dangerously. No, first it was Dangerously, and then it was changed to Danger Lee. If you guys get a chance, you've got to see a real sleeper B-class movie called Johnny Dangerously. You'll lose your mind at how awesome that movie was. Anyway, he worked at WCW for the most part. Now, this is something I didn't know, and this had nothing to do with wrestling. Paul E. is the co-owner of Looking for Larry agency in New York City and was personally named one of Advertising Age's top 100 global marketers. That also explains a lot, folks. He's the father of 2 children. In February 1993, I didn't know this, Heyman filed a lawsuit against WCW alleging wrongful termination and ethnic discrimination. The lawsuit was settled privately out of court. Now that's pretty cool, and it doesn't make sense, and it doesn't seem like it would be a bullshit story because Paulie's father was a lawyer, and aside from that, the way the industry talked back then about blacks and Jews and ethnicities, unforgivable. The way people used to talk in all industries, really. There was definitely cause for lawsuits in the business environment. Here's some things I didn't know about the little hustler that was Paul E. By age 11, he was running a mail-order business selling celebrity and sports memorabilia from his home. While still a teenager, he fast-talked his way backstage at a WWF event at Madison Square Garden as a photojournalist. He was paid by the company for several of his photographs. Can you imagine how that would boost the ego of a teenager? He graduated from Edgemont High School and attended SUNY Purchase, I don't know what that is, and worked on air as an opinionated controversial host at SUNY's radio station and the WARY-FM New York station for Westchester Community College. In 1985, at the age of 19, he became a photographer, then a producer, and check this out, he must have been there for the death of it. He was also the promoter for the New York City nightclub Studio 54. If those walls could have talked, folks. So, here's what I want to say about Paulie from a personal front. He gets a lot of flack and a lot of heat for the way things went down with ECW. Take it from me, everybody wants to wrestle for you when you're promoting shows. And at the same time, during the same time frame, I was running a much smaller wrestling company. And I would tell guys, don't come down. I can't afford to pay you. And they would show up anyway and beg you to work for nothing. And then after they worked, they expected a payoff, even though they showed up, you didn't need them, and they said they were going to work for nothing. So there's a lot of bad talk, and Paul E. actually does owe a lot of people money. You've got to give Paul E. tons and tons of credit, or owed them money. You have to give Paul E. tons and tons of credit because he was actually one of the pioneers when it came to pay-per-view. There's absolutely no doubt about the fact that ECW had an outstanding cult following with all that marketing behind him and all that hustle behind Paul E. It only makes sense. So that being said, unless you were a real asshole, and if you're listening to this, unless you were a real asshole, Paul E. went ahead and made an amends, or made all of his amends, seemingly the amends that were deserved, because he got everybody a look by pushing them to WWE and Vince McMahon to get looks, okay? So I think all those things have been handled, at the end of the day, I get it. You want to make everybody happy, and you just effing can't. When you are emotionally attached to pro wrestling, that's sometimes how it goes. You've got to take your emotions out of the equation. Otherwise, it's the sink or swim situation. You sink like a friggin' anchor. There's other things I'll say about Paul E. is this. He has been with WWE how long? It's not a secret. Paul E. wants to be in creative. But Paul E., I believe, is better off doing what he's doing because it seems like he's got so much on his plate as it is. It would be hard for him to focus, take the stress in politics that would go ahead and go along with creative, especially working alongside Hollywood people and actual script writers when you've got all that, pro wrestling resume behind you and all the dues Paul E. paid. One thing you can say about Paul E., which is undeniable, Paul E. loves the wrestling business. He loves the sport. Can you imagine all that he'd been through when you look at the history of ECW. He got the attention of WWE. He got the attention of Vince McMahon. And actually what happened, they revamped and they got a hell of a run out of a WWE brand of ECW. Paul E., my personal dealings with him, the first time I saw him, I was greenier than goose. It was at College of Lake County up here in Lake County, Illinois, north of Chicago. He came in and do an indie shot, and he mistook me for Marty Jannetty, which I took as a wonderful compliment. A lot of people told me to hit Paul E. up when I was starting to age in the wrestling industry. I chose to go with my business instead, and I didn't. But I guarantee you it probably would have been a great fit. We also ran into each other from time to time, other than just passing in the hallway at WWE tapings, when he was managing this great big guy with an outstanding look called Kurgan as part of the Truth Commission. When they went to go ahead and make Kurgan an individual star, Paul E. was managing him, and Paul E. was trying to agent the match, and that was just a no-win situation. It wasn't personal against Kurgan. It was just the fact that they really hot-shotted that guy, and he had no clue about anything to do inside the ring. However, I did get along well with Paul E., and I finally said, why don't we just stop beating our heads against the wall? And he trusted me to go ahead in that scenario, and we made chicken salad out of chicken shit. At the end of the day, it was at least watchable. Okay, guys, once again, Jewish, Asian, Pacific Islander wrestlers you should know. I'm going to go ahead and put both Kenzo Suzuki's Wikipedia link in the description, as well as Paul E.'s Wikipedia link in the description, and also ways that you can help support and get some really cool wrestling content, for Premier Pro Wrestling. And again, this has been a hell of a learning experience for me. I did not have any idea that Paul E. was second generation from Holocaust survivors. That says a lot about this man's drive, and you can say a lot of things about Paul E., but nobody can deny the fact the man is tenacious, and I'm sure it was the way he was raised.